I'll start today with a quick recap of the last day, and then yeah, we'll go through today's materials. So, any questions you have, please give me a shout as we go through. So, what did we look at the last day? So it was an introduction to user experience, what that meant, what was involved, and I still need to send these slides to the college as well, so I'll send them um, after this class with today's materials as well. We had a look at just the variety of user experience, all the different potential options, some examples, the iPhone, voice UX as well, how to interact with a device just using your voice instead of pressing it or instead of a mouse. This idea of ecosystems and interoperability. You remember that word? Really good word. Interoperability, where things work together in an ecosystem. Could anyone give me an example of an ecosystem? It doesn't have to be a technology ecosystem. So what does this word mean? What does that word mean? An ecosystem, a desert ecosystem. Yeah, exactly. Or you could have a forest ecosystem. So that would be all the animals, all the plants in the desert. A farm would be an ecosystem. Almost, a village or a town would be an ecosystem. So if you think of all those components in the ecosystem, everything working together like it should. So now if we apply that to digital, think of all the different devices you might have in a home or in a business, and you want them all to work together. And that brings you back to that word interoperability. Super important. Okay, does everyone understand that? Everyone gets interoperability? Yeah, good. Okay. So then as we progress, we can see examples of user experience all around us in shops, in toys. We looked at some examples. And then we did a quick activity, and you guys provided some examples of systems that you used. They could be different systems. I think we had the example of a parking meter or some sort of a ticketing machine. We had examples of different websites, different apps, some of them working well and some of them working not so well. So the work of designing the system then is it's the user, the UX designer. So then they work in product design, system design, service design, different areas. And then we looked briefly at the idea of design and what it actually means to design something, and the importance of this and this word. Another very important word that'll keep coming up: iteration. Could anyone explain that to me? So can I do a iteration? Hang on, sorry. Just so the repetition of a process or utterance. So that's not it. Yeah, a new version of a piece of computer hardware or software. Yeah. So a new version. So something that consistently repeat it and it improves. Generally, it improves. So, but very important word, like interoperability, and we'll keep coming back to that. And then this concept of human-centered design, which we'll explore more today. Look, there were other examples. We looked at graphic user interfaces. This is the part of the computer that the user interacts with. Um, we mentioned the godfather of UX, Don Norman. and yeah, how we all live in a digital world. And then there was a little bit of, I suppose, history as to how we have got to today. And today we are in this, what you would call ubiquitous. So, to understand ubiquitous, so looking at the dictionary, it says present, appearing, or found everywhere. So ubiquitous computing. So we would all live in a very digital world. We use devices all day, every day. They're all around us, and we can't really escape that. Other examples, I suppose, there's the Hawkeye example that they use in tennis. I think they have a similar system in soccer as well for the goals. Um, yeah, the future of digital life. Yeah, and this concept of having these three things in a successful product. You need technology, you need marketing for the product, and you need good user experience. If you don't have those three things, your product will struggle. Okay, so that's a quick recap of the last day. Any questions on that? All good? Yeah, thumbs up. Okay, yeah, brill. Okay, well, look, let's proceed. We have a few slides to get through. We'll have a little bit of an exercise in the middle that I want you guys to contribute. Yeah, and stop me as we go along. Like I said, we'll send any slides that I have over to the college for you. Okay, so let's crack into it, right? So the first thing I want to look at this morning is what they call the PACT framework, and that's people, activities, contexts, and technologies. Right, so we'll start up here. So UX designers use the PACT framework to explore four key areas, right? People, activities, contexts, and technologies. And these help designers understand who the users are, what they're trying to do, where the interaction happens, and what tools they'll use, what technologies they'll use. Okay, so let's go through those four things in brief, and then we'll look at them again in detail. So let's just hang on. So this is where we are. So people are the individuals of group or groups who use the system. And designers, you have to consider traits like vision, mobility, um, memory, attention span, all that sort of stuff, maybe even social background to make the systems widely accessible. So do you understand this word? Accessible, accessible, right? So it's available to lots and lots of people, right? Because you don't want to alienate. I think we gave the example the last day of, you could have a website or app or something, and you might make it available in multiple languages because you want lots of people to be able to engage with it, right? Moving on, second point, activities. So what are activities? So the activities are the tasks or that the users want to complete. And that could be something simple, like checking a balance on a bank account. Could be something more complicated, like editing a video. Could be a routine task, log in, log out, that kind of stuff. Or something like changing or changing a password. So these are all the type of activities that people would use across most digital services. Log in, log out, change password, password reset. When I'm in the app, what is the flow of the activities that I want to complete? The next point then is contexts. So that's the environment. That's where. So I have a particular context right now around me, right? So I'm sitting in my home office and I have a screen in front of me, and I have another screen kind of set up beside me. So is anyone on the move right now? So are any of you guys on the move? So is anyone traveling from school or from work? Or maybe you're in a public area. You are, right? Very good. So Abdullah, are you in I think we've seen you in a playground before, are you? You seem to have a kind of a park close to where you work or go to school. You're in the school van. Okay, very good. So your context now is very different from mine, or it's very different from the other students, like who are maybe sitting in front of a screen. Also, the context is very different if you're sitting in front of a desktop screen versus a tablet versus a phone. So the context is super important as well. So it can be noisy. You can be in a public place, you can be in a private place, you can be in a social setting. You can be on your own, or you can be in a shared space or a public space. And there can be organizational rules as well that might impact context. And all these shape how a system works in real life and how the users, will be able to engage in it. So the last point then, technologies are the tools that the users interact with. So you're talking about your hardware, your software, your input and your output. And designers need to consider all these and how the system responds and how it helps them ultimately to achieve their goals. Okay, so this is the PACT framework. So we're going to go through each of these points now with an individual slide. Okay, we'll start with the P. So people. So people vary in physical, mental, and social ways, and UX must support diversity. So these design choices affect users, and they impact if you can see, hear, touch, or understand the system. So there might be physical differences in the users, including differences of vision, movement, coordination, this kind of thing. A button might be hard to press, or the type, the text might be small. And designers must suit different body types and environments, right? So can you give me an example of a person who might struggle to use an app, right? Think of somebody who you know. They might be a little bit older. If you think of a grandparent or an older neighbor, and you're watching them trying to use their phone, and the text is very small on the phone. That would be an example then of somebody, struggling. So how could the designers, help those users? What things could the designers do to help the users in that instance? Any suggestions? Yeah, accessibility. So make the font bigger. All those type of things. Yeah, and you can, and you see in most, if we look at, right, so say we go in here and we go, and one of the settings then I have available to me is this, where I can zoom the text in and out like that quite easily to, you know, it can also be adaptive. It will actually expand with the screen as well. So these are all little features that people put in to help people. You can also, the way your phone reverses its color scheme, you have sort of day mode and night mode, light mode and dark mode. So, and again, these are all accessibility settings, right? You also have differences in of ergonomics, and that means fitting or designing tools that fit the body. So you're talking about an adjustable chair where your screen is positioned, low strain keyboards, all these different things. There's correct and incorrect positions for engaging with computers, but also other digital devices. So have you heard of ergonomics? Uh, so computer ergonomics is this thing. So now you can see there's two different examples here, right? You can see, let's look at this one. So you can see in this picture, the lady is sort of hunched over the screen and she's looking down and the screen is lower than her eye level. I think we'll get a better example than that. Yeah, this one looks quite nice. So there is good good posture, and you can see the back is straight, this kind of thing. So that will be an example of good ergonomics. So that's the user using the device in the correct position, right? So you can have psychological differences of memory, language, understanding, and all those type of things. And you can have social factors. You can have, the confidence in the technology. Like I imagine all you guys are very confident with technology. You've grown up with it. So you would be more confident than, say, somebody who's a little bit older and where the technology is just newer to them, right? So that's people. So that's the P, impact, people. So moving on to the next point, activities, which is the A, right? So the activities are the actions that the users want to carry out. So this is what they want to do, right? And you can have different types of actions, and they're always going to vary in terms of complexity, timing, importance, those type of things. And UX has to fit both the task that the user is trying to carry out and also their mindset at that time. Frequency matters. So frequency is how often a task is being completed. So ideally, tasks that are done often should be quick and easy to do. So if a user needs to do a certain task on a system, you would make it easier. So an example there will be on a till, a software till, and the button, the kind of the confirm button is generally bigger and it's kind of highlighted because it's always going to be pressed. You're going to be adding in different products to the transaction, but you're also always going to be confirming them at the end. So the buttons then that people tend to hit the most often, a good thing to do is to just make them bigger. Rarer tasks might need prompts or instructions. So there could be a thing that people don't really do that often, and then they might need some support in being able to do it. So interruptions can also impact how people work, or if the person is under pressure, they might make more mistakes or errors. And the system ideally should help them stay on track with the task and be able to recover. So you have different types of tasks. You have complex tasks that might involve different people, more open-ended goals, and you have simpler tasks, and that they generally follow, clearer steps, and they're sort of shorter in duration. So UX then really matches the task, I suppose, within reason. And you've also kind of consequences, and I'm talking about mistakes. So you have, oh, if, going to the wrong screen on an application is, very minor. You're just navigating. Deleting information from a system is a more serious task. So, there should be multiple layers of kind of authority to allow a user to do that. You see that in software where you click on something and then it says to you, do you want to do this? And you go, yes. And it goes, okay, this is going to delete everything. Are you sure you want to do this? And you have to confirm multiple times. So that would be an example of that. And these are sort of principles then of a system in terms of the usability of the system. Is the system effectiveness? Is it efficient? Is it, where does it rank in terms of learnability? Is it easy to pick up? Is it easy to remember? Does it support error handling? And ultimately, does it make the user, satisfied when they're using it? Are they going to want to come back? And the last day we looked at some you know satisfaction levels from some of the systems, and I think we had the ticket machine that was quite frustrating, or maybe it was a parking machine. But then we had other apps. I think we had the Pinterest app, we had TikTok and stuff, and they were quite high in terms of satisfaction. Okay, so moving on then, context. So we're right now we're on this Zoom call and we're using our devices in different contexts, and the context impacts how the system are used. Examples, have you ever tried to use your phone on the beach? So has anyone used a device on the beach? And what did you notice? Or in the garden, say in bright sunshine. So has it, yeah, you have. And what did you notice when, so when you were using your device outside, what did you notice?
It's very difficult to see the screen, and
It
there's a
is.
lot of reflections.
There is, because it's a glass screen. So it's going to, yeah, and we can't see. So if you look at a product like, say, something like a Kindle, this kind of product, they have a sort of a matte, it's not a reflective screen on it. It's more of a, so, and they're designed so that you can sort of use them outside, and you can go and you can, sit on a beach and you can read your sort of text quite easily, much more so than you can with a sort of a glass screen. So all these contexts, they impact the usability of the system. Um, Physical context can include noise, light, movement, space. Um, the example we mentioned, you can have gloves on when it's cold. You can be in an environment where it's bumpy, like on a bus or a train or something. And so they all impact the interaction with the system. And then you can have social context, and that changes how people behave. Certain tasks need privacy, banking, for example. And then users can also behave differently when they're in groups or when they're in public or when they're in private, you know. And then organizational context can also impact, and that relates to kind of policies and roles and responsibilities within organizations. And sometimes they govern what a user can see or the things that they are allowed to do in a system, right? So moving on to the next point then, the technologies. Excuse me. So we looked at this, I think, in the previous course. We had different types of device, input devices, output devices, and these are all um, the the tools that the users interact with. And so examples include apps, software, networks. Good design matches the tools to the people, the tasks, and the settings. You have different input methods or modes. You have buttons, you have a mouse, you have keyboards, you have voice, you can have, tracking. Um, you see that in, even in gaming, things like Connect or these cameras that connect to devices, and then your body becomes a kind of an input device. Um, you also have the output, which is the feedback that the system gives you. Um, that could be text that you're looking at on a screen. It can be an image. It depends. Different colors, different things, sounds, vibrations, all that stuff, and all that feedback has to be clear and it has to be timely. You've also got the connectivity. So it can be very frustrating when connectivity is poor, as we all know. And that depends on different protocols, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, networks, all that kind of things. But poor connectivity can destroy user satisfaction. So, and then you have the context, you've got messages, menus, the media that you're being engaged in, the feedback, and it has to be accurate, clear, and suited to the task. Ultimately, the technology must support the user, and a well-designed system makes tasks easier. So it should guide me through the task. It should be, reasonably pleasurable to use, and it should be allow me to complete the task, quickly and yeah, efficiently. So, and you'll find that. And do you find as you get older that you have certain pieces of software, for example, that you prefer over others? So you might, you know, have different versions of the same software. So say for something like Excel or um, Microsoft Word, and you have a desktop version and you have a sort of an online version, and they're slightly different. And then you might have different versions of that in different on different platforms. So you could be on a Windows or a Mac, or looking at other word processors, you could have something like Google Docs and Google Sheets. And as you try out a few of them, you'll generally find that, hey, I like this one or I like that one. And that is to do with the usability of the system and the user experience that you're sort of having. So that's the last point in that section, is T. So PACT. So remember that. So, excuse me, let's apply it to a couple of examples. So let's scope a problem with PACT. All right, so PACT helps designers explore a problem space. And the goal ultimately is to find the best mix of people, activities, contexts, and technologies for a specific setting. So PACT can be applied early and on in the design process, but also on an ongoing basis. And it supports analysis, idea generation, design decisions, all those type of things. And each element of PACT requires consideration. So you have to examine, as the designer, the differences amongst the users, the nature of the tasks, the settings, the technology that's going to be used, all those things. So let's look at some examples, and then I want you guys to work on an example. So the first example, this is an access system for university labs, for the university students and the staff as well, right? So the stakeholders include the students, the staffs, the cleaners, and security. So anyone who needs to get in or out of the lab. So the task is short, it's frequent, and it's individual. So what you're talking about is going up with a key card, or you're putting a code in on a keypad or something like that to get into it in a door. And the context, look, it could involve low light, it could happen, at all different hours, crowded entry. You would imagine that lots of people would be going into the lab, say at the start of the class. And the technology must be quick and easy to use, and it needs clear feedback and possible checks back to a database to see if the person is authorized. So usually, what type of feedback would this type of system give you? So think of the feedback that the system needs to provide to the user as they're going in the door past the access system. So you're going up and you're trying to get in, right? So you have a couple of options. You might have a key card. You could have biometric, where you're scanning a fingerprint, but that's probably overkill for a university. You might have you know, you could have a green light. Yeah. So it has to be something really simple to let. So how does the system let the user know that the task is achieved or there's a problem? So usually what would you encounter in those environments? So think of, you might have something simple getting onto a transport system. What does it do? How does it let us know?
Beeping sound.
A beeping sound, yeah. You have two different types of beeps. So you have maybe a higher pitched beep for success and a brr for fail. So the system. So if you think, because the keypad system, so door keypad system. So it might be something like this. this kind of a thing, and you have a fob or you have a code or something. Now, there's no screen on that, so it can't flash up a warning or something to us. So there's that looks like a biometric system, is it? The person is, yeah, they're scanning a fingerprint. That's probably overkill for this example. So the system needs to give the user feedback in some way. Okay, so that's one example of an access system for university labs. So let's look at another example over here on the right. So the PACT. So elderly people, citizens aged 70 and over, and some of them are using the internet for the first time, and some are experienced users looking for better ways to navigate around. So the activities that they might be completing are using the internet as a tool to help them with their day-to-day needs, and generally the context will be at home, but sometimes they're out in public. And then the technology that they use is basic to no knowledge of how to use a computer. Some may have no real understanding of the internet, while others might be more advanced and have more experience. Some of them are using a tablet, others are using a desktop computer at home, right? So the what I'm trying to show you is the way PACT can be applied to situations to help you scope a problem. So PACT, right? So let's work on a problem together. Okay, so if you can, or on your phone or whatever, grab a piece of paper, right? Write down PACT, right? People, activities, context, technology. Okay. Now, I want you to think about a point of sale system for a cafe. So somewhere you can go for lunch, somewhere you can go and grab, some coffee and a cake, that type of thing. Okay. So this is a point of sale system. Okay. Do you all understand? So, so you know what this is. So a point of sale system. You know this thing? Everyone's seen those. All right, so one for a cafe. And what we're going to do is apply PACT analysis, and we're going to think about the people who will use the system, right? Consider the activities involved, identify the context, and then maybe reflect on the technologies. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of minutes. So on a piece of paper, write down, if you can, people, activities, contexts, technologies, right? And then beside it, for each of those, list the people that you think will be using this system. List the activities, list the context, list the technologies. Okay, so if you do that, what I'll do in a second is I'll get you to post so you've got 2 minutes to complete the exercise, and I'll be right back. Now, so in chat, type who are the people that will be using the system. Or you can just call them out if you want. You can certainly talk to the group if you feel comfortable. So who are the people?
I think the people would mostly be students and working adults because
Yeah, yeah,
they'd probably be getting coffee before they start their day's activities. Yeah.
completely. Yeah. So and also interestingly, it hasn't been specified whether this is self-service or not. So you could actually have both. So because you could have staff behind a counter, right? Or this could be some kind of a system where you walk up and it's a self-service thing, and it's actually the person who's getting the coffee uses the system as opposed to a staff member serving them. So that's an interesting way to look at it. And yeah, and then if you dig into the demographics, right? Early adult to middle age, working class. Okay, yeah, you can dig into the demographics more and more. So who are the people that are, now you don't want to generalize too much, but who are the type of people? Yeah, probably, like you said, students, um, yeah, baristas, cashiers. Yeah, so the customers, we'd have to decide if the customers, but we didn't really specify. So is it just the staff or is it the customers? Okay, so that's good, right? So what about the next point, the activities or the tasks? So
Uh,
what about the activities?
I would think the activities are just paying because if they're going for their school or for their work, they probably just want to tap
Yeah,
their card or use their software and get it
yeah,
over with as quickly as
yeah.
possible. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, excellent. Yeah, no, completely. And so in that kind of environment, the speed of the service is really important because you're rushing to class. You need to catch a bus or something. So you don't want to be stuck in a queue with a slow till system, do you? So, and yeah, Daniel, correct. Taking orders. Yeah, absolutely. You might. So think of the activity. So you've got a group of people. Everyone comes up. Everyone orders something slightly different. You order maybe some food and different types of hot drinks. You add them all to the order, and then you pay. And then the person might say, "Well, actually, we're going to split the bill between us, or can we do, half card, half cash, all that type of thing." So these would all be common things in that sort of an environment. So the system would need to be able to accommodate all those things. Um, so the activities, Sue, ordering and paying for food and drinks, very good. Entering items, printing the receipt, handling the cash, handling the digital payments. Yeah, complete, excellent, very well done. Taking orders, support, brand promotion, and payment. Yeah, not so sure about brand promotion. You could have maybe a display on the other side of the till that shows special offers to the customers. So what Pact does is it allows you to have all these conversations and to really dig into the problem, right? Let's keep going. Let's look at context. So identify the context in which the system will be used.
Uh, I think again because it's probably people who are going to get a cup of coffee
Hmm.
before their day's activities. People
Yeah,
might be a bit in a rush where they don't want to spend too much time
yeah,
on
yeah.
figuring out what to order, just get their usual order and get started
Totally.
with the day.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. A busy environment. Let me get my, I need to get to class. A busy cafe, long queues, all that type of stuff. So, if you consider the potential environment that the people are working in, the last thing they want then is a complicated system. To one of the things you see now, and we looked at this, you see barcode scanning for products. So, and the reason then that because when you can scan something with a barcode scanner, everyone understands barcode scanners. Yeah, I think we've looked at them previously. So it means then you don't need to go in and find something in a menu system or even key in. You see self-service scanners in supermarkets now, and you just walk past the thing and it goes beep, you know. So those type of technologies really would help in a busy environment. There are also stores now, and look, we're getting a little bit off the point. Have you seen the Amazon stores where you basically just scan your phone on the way in, and then it has motion tracking and it follows you in the store with cameras, and it identifies what you're taking off the shelf and putting in the basket and ultimately leaving with, and then you're charged accordingly. So these are stores with no cashiers. So if you could imagine a busy environment, So something like that would make it so convenient. So then the last point, so the technology. So the technology, what technologies will be needed in our point of sale system?
Two things come to mind for me. The first is it needs to be very familiar technology, not
Yeah,
not something new they're trying out. And
yeah,
the
yeah.
second is
Mm.
something that would also help them to customize their order. So maybe a touch screen so that they can choose how much sugar they want, how much milk they want in their coffee and whatnot.
Completely. Yeah,
Yeah.
completely. Yeah, very good. And you're thinking about a point of sale system that's almost like self-serve, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's like what you see when you go into McDonald's. Um, it's this kind of a thing, isn't it? You go in, I'm sure you've all used these at some stage, where you go in and you can see how big the interface is, and so a designer has, sat there and sort of worked all this out. Okay, so excellent, great work, guys, on that activity. Couple of comments in the chat. An intuitive, simple GUI. Yes, very good point, Bailey. And Sue says technology, a touchscreen point of sale connected to a receipt printer or card reader. Yeah, these are all the type of technologies. Probably internet as well. Probably, other devices, maybe a scanner connected via Bluetooth. These are all relevant things. And why Pact is good is it allows you to look at these things collectively, and it gives you a framework to apply to the problem, right? So this was sort of my solution. I said the staff could vary in age, experience, or language. Customers are often in a rush. Thought the accessibility needs. It could be the standing height of the device, the visibility of the screen, the payment options. Moving on to activities, the main task is to price and pay for goods. This happens quickly and frequently, often during peak times, so the data entry needs to be fast. Easy to use, minimal training, all those type of things. The cafe is noisy and busy with long queues. Staff may be tired. The physical layout of the store or the cafe helps, how quickly staff and customers can move around. And then the technologies, the touch screens must be responsive. The GUIs need to be intuitive. The payment systems need to support cards, cash, and digital wallets. And the system has to work even during network outages and those type of things. So applying Pact to a problem. Okay. Okay, and well done, everyone. Excuse me, on that activity. Mm. Now, so just moving on to the next topic. So this user-centered design, where you put the person at the center of the design process. So we'll go through the points. User-centered design is creative, and it's a human-focused process that shapes systems around real users, their activities, and contexts. UCD, user-centered design, is iterative. There's that word again. So what does iterative mean? Can you remind me? What's iterative? Yeah, goes around, goes around. It doesn't move from start to finish in a straight line. It repeats and it keeps going. Yeah, so it's like repetition with progress. It's not linear, right? So designers move between understanding, envisioning, and evaluating. And over time, they refine their ideas and they learn more. So each stage or each iteration informs the next. And design practice evolves over time through reflection, accumulated experience, and over time, the designers identify what makes designs effective, functional, problematic, those type of things. So we move over to the side here and the diagram, and I'll just talk you through it. You've got kind of a start point, and this cycle would repeat. would repeat. So these are the people that we're thinking about. We define the requirements, we design the concept, we might build prototypes, and then a more detailed design, we would test it, and then we would go around again. So actually this diagram is kind of incorrect because this point would actually go back to the start. So you might have to do multiple design cycles. So when something cycles, it repeats. So what we depend on is understanding and stakeholder research. So the stakeholders are all the people that might be using our, system. And this understanding phase, that's where we get to build up what we know. And this identifies what a system must achieve and how it can fit in with people's lives. Ultimately, they're trying to do a task. We need to help them with that. And the designers investigate the goals, the challenges, and the wider environment that the product or the thing that we're designing will have to operate in. So then you have two types of requirements. You have what they call functional requirements, and that's what the system does. And then you have non-functional requirements, and that could be qualities like reliability, usability, performance. And both of these guide the direction that the design takes. Now, the stakeholders, these are the people. So they include everyone that is affected or interacts with the system. The end users, it could be colleagues in a workplace, it could be the management, it could be the regulators, it could be customers, all these different types of people that will come into contact with the system. And designers have to recognize that they're all going to want to do slightly different things and they'll have different interests and expectations. So how you do that is through observation, interviews, and workshops. And they reveal sort of current understanding and practices and then help you identify opportunities for improvement. So in a simple sense, you create a design as best you can and then you test it, and then based on that testing you improve your design, and you do that over multiple design cycles, and eventually you get closer to something that works. So we have this concept of conceptual design and physical design. The first one, so conceptual design defines what the system is and how it should behave. And it focuses on the content, the structure, and the information that users need to form a clear picture in their head. And conceptual models can help map out the relationships between the people, the processes, the technologies that are involved in the system. And then physical design, it translates these ideas into a more concrete form, right? And that could include visual layout, structure, interaction flow, all those type of things. So you're moving from initial concept into something that's more concrete. So the environment and the evaluation, envisionment. So envisionment turns ideas into visible forms such as sketches, wireframes, prototypes, and these allow the designers and the users to see, discuss, and refine design concepts. Excuse me. So you can see over on the side that somebody's, they're creating, it looks like a kind of an app or something like that. They're looking at how people might log into the app and the screens that they see. So here's a a picture, here's maybe a couple of input fields. People are leaving comments and they're saying, yeah, I like this. They're using a platform called Miro, which is sort of it's like a virtual sort of whiteboard where you can just draw things and people can leave kind of comments on it. And then when you would go through these initial design stages, you might build something or code out the interface more, completely. So that's known as envisionment, and you're trying to work from this very sort of basic understanding of the thing, building a prototype, a minimal kind of version of the product. And at all times you're considering and you're talking and you're iterating in terms of the design. Evaluation then runs throughout the process, and the designers need to test assumptions, validate their requirements, and assess how the designs perform in practice. So get it in front of real people, see what the people think of it, see what the people do on it, track their interactions and learn from it. And these methods, they can vary by stage, from informal reviews to structured usability testing. And that will be where you would, ask somebody, say, on a digital system to complete a task and time how long it takes them to complete the task, and then look at can you improve the completion times. But ultimately, the aim is to ensure that all design decisions are grounded in evidence and that you're moving forward and you're making progress all the time. This concept of agile and iterative delivery. So I suppose the more traditional method is this, where you have a start and an end, and you go through different phases, and you go, these are the steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, complete, right? Agile is different in that you have these sort of repeating cycles, repeating cycles, repeating cycles, right? So that's just the difference between the two methodologies. This is known as waterfall, and because it's kind of a cascading approach. Then the other one is more iterative. So agile development complements UCD by promoting short, focused design cycles known as sprints. So each one of these is known as a sprint, right? And each cycle aims to produce a usable outcome that can be tested and improved. Teams often develop a minimal viable product, or an MVP. So an MVP is a simplified version used to test the ideas with real users before scaling up, in terms of production. And agile values collaboration, regular reflection, adaptability, and it integrates user feedback continuously. So you need to get your design in front of people, other members of your team, ultimately users that will be using the product. And you have to ensure that the evolving product all the while remains relevant and effective. So frequent evaluation and release cycles allow the design to mature over time, keeping user experience at the center and at the core of every stage. We have 4 minutes left, so I'm actually going to just briefly touch on personas, but we'll revisit this the next day because there's 3 slides in this. Do you know what personas are? Where you build up personas of people, and you've heard of personas, yeah, and they use them quite a lot in marketing. So personas are, what we think about the potential people. Look at the example of the till system in the cafe, and we had to imagine who the people were that would be using the system. We had some examples of, were they going to be students? Were they going to be middle-aged? Those type of things. Because when we can imagine who might be using the system, ultimately we can end up with a better system. You have a real diversity across personas, and sometimes you can use sort of forms like this, where you build up these sort of fictional almost, but they can be quite accurate as well. So what's the person's name? What age are they? What role are they, male or female? What's their background? Where do they come from? What experiences have they had? What are they going to like? What are they going to dislike? And what you do is you create these personas, and then you imagine their interaction with the system. So an example, and this is the example that's in the book, is of this. It's like a health and fitness kind of companion system. And we had two people. One was Sandy, one was Murray, one was 23, one was 46. You can see that one is kind of not really that healthy, and then one seems to be very healthy. And these are all different people that would be using this H. Hi everyone. Sorry, did the call drop there? I seem to lose internet. I think we were kind of finished anyway in terms of the. Hi, you're still on the call, guys?
Yeah, we're here.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. Okay, cool. Sorry, my internet dropped right at the end there, just as we were finishing, and then it's just come back. Thank you for joining me today. Sorry about that little technical gremlin right at the end. But I will share the slides with the college, and you guys have a great weekend, and we'll catch up with you um, next week. Yeah, sorry, the call just dropped right at the end.
No worries. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you,
No worries,
sir.
guys. Have a great weekend, and
Have
we'll
a great
talk to you soon.
weekend.
Cheers. Thanks. Bye.